so this week's portion is Vayishlach. It means and he sent. We're going to be in Genesis 32 through 36. So we have a lot to cover. So let's get going. So a little recap from last week. Jacob goes to Laban to find a wife. He meets Rachel at the well. We see that he worked for Laban for 7 years for Rachel. Then he gets deceived and gets Leah as a wife instead. He has to work another 7 years to get Rachel. Then he tends Laban's flocks for another 6 years. Unfortunately for him, Yah blesses him through all of this. And Jacob leaves Laban without saying goodbye. Laban goes and meets him and makes a covenant with him. So that's kind of the recap from what we talked about last week. And now we're going to get into this week. So Genesis 32, we're going to start in verse 4. And we're going to roll through it. Then Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. He also commanded them, saying, "This is what you should say to my lord, to Esau. This is what your servant Jacob said. I have been staying with Laban and have lingered until now. Now I've come to possess oxen and donkey, flocks, male servants and female servants. I sent word to tell my lord in order to find favor in your eyes." The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We went to your brother to Esau, and he's also coming out to meet you, and 400 men with him." I mean, that would scare me, because that signifies that his army is with him. Like that's 400 men. That's not like some buddies. Those guys are most likely armed. So Jacob became extremely afraid and distressed. He divided the people with him, along with the flocks and herds and camels, into 2 camps. For he thought, if Esau comes to one camp and strikes it, the camp that's left will escape. Then Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Adonai, who said to me, return to your land and to your relatives, and I will do good with you. I am unworthy of all the proofs of mercy and all of the dependability that you've shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed over this Jordan, and now I've become 2 camps." And I underlined that he says I am unworthy here, because I got thinking about this idea that he has been extremely blessed of Yah. Like, he came there with absolutely nothing. And now he has all of this stuff. And how many people do we know of today that would get that extremely blessed and yet still be able to say, I'm not even worthy of all this? I mean, most people, especially nowadays with the name it, claim it idea, they're like, "Whoo, this is my blessing." Like, he didn't say that. He said, "I'm unworthy." I mean, he was like, I don't even deserve this. But you've been faithful to me. You've been a great father. "Deliver me, please, from my brother's hand, from Esau's hand. For I am afraid of him, that he'll come and strike me, the mothers with the children. You yourself said, I will most certainly do good with you, and will make your seed like the sand of the sea, that cannot be counted because of its abundance." So here he's giving all the glory to Yah. Like, there is absolutely nothing that I've done. I came in with nothing. I'm leaving out with everything. This is totally Yah's doing. He cries out for deliverance because he's scared of his brother, which rightfully he should be. He pretty much took everything that his brother ever could have gotten from him. And this is not my notes, but scholars say that the time that has passed from the time he left until now is about 23 total years. So, 23 years later, he's still worried that his brother hadn't got over the fact that he took everything from him. Yeah.
I wish we could know more of the story of, like, how Esau just, like, when it was he forgave him, like, what happened, what transpired there. That would be cool too. Yeah.
But then he reminds Yah of his covenant, which is interesting, because I don't think God forgot. But he didn't do it for he didn't do it for Yah's sake. He did it for his own sake. He reminded himself. He's like, it's so important to note that, because when we get in situations, it's okay to say, "Hey God, you said this. Right. Like, your word says this. Not so much so we're actually reminding God because he doesn't forget, but it's to stir our own faith. So that we didn't forget about his promises. So he stayed overnight there. Then from all that had come into his possession, he took an offering for Esau his brother. 200 female goats, 200 billy goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milking camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the hands of his servants, each herd by itself, and he said to his servants, "Pass over before me, and put a gap between each of the herds." I think it's interesting that he separated them individually, because it's almost like he was letting these gifts come in waves to soften Esau up. He was like, "Oh, here's the thing," and then just a little bit later, the donkeys show up, and then a little bit later, the camels show up, the rams show up. It's like, oh man, the presents just keep coming. Then he commanded the first one, saying, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you going? And to whom do all these people, or do all these before you belong?' Then you are to say, 'To your servant, to Jacob, it's an offering sent to my lord, to Esau. And look, he's also behind us.' And he has also commanded the second one, the third one, and those who were going behind the flock, saying, 'Say the same exact thing to Esau when you find him.'" So what's wrong with this picture? I kind of underlined it, but I can't do that on purpose. Can you see that okay, Erica?
I need glasses.
It says, "To your servant," right? Well, what's the problem with him saying "to your servant"?
Jacob, that's Jacob's servant, right?
No. So
Yeah.
Well, Jacob's servant is saying this on behalf of Jacob. So, to your servant, to Jacob. Who do they belong to? They belong to your servant. So he's telling Esau it's his servant. Jacob is his servant.
So what's wrong with that?
Jacob was supposed to rule over Esau.
Because it's the older son.
But isn't he just humbling himself?
Correct. But it's interesting that he goes about that. So we look at Genesis 25, and this is from a few weeks ago. But the children struggled with one another inside her, and she said, "If this is like this, why is this happening?" Adonai said, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from your body will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, but the older will serve the younger." So Jacob is saying that he's Esau's servant. So he's approaching this in a very humble manner. He's like, "Look, I technically am not your servant.
Right.
Technically, I have the authority. I now have the riches. I have the wealth. I have the blessing." But he is approaching Esau 23 years later, humbly, and saying, "All right, I know that I'm supposed to rule over you, but at this moment I'm coming as a servant. I'm humbling myself." So back to the portion. "Then you are to say, 'Look, your servant Jacob is also behind us, for he thought, let me appease him with the offering that goes ahead of me. And afterward see his face. Perhaps he'll lift up my face.'" That phrase, "perhaps he'll lift up my face," is just an acceptance thing. So it was very common in that day and age for someone to come and bow, and for the person to hey, stand up, lift up his face. So it was a means of, hopefully he'll accept me, and some translations say that.
We noticed the last portion they talked about his father-in-law's face fell. It seems to be like a
Yes, his face falling is an expression of disapproval.
Of this.
Correct.
Like happy or mad. It's just funny.
Yeah, face falling would be a sign of disapproval.
Yeah.
Lifting up a face would be a sign of acceptance. Yes, absolutely.
I thought that was kind of funny.
That's he was looking for acceptance. So the offering passed over ahead of him while he spent the night in the camp. Then he got up that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and he sent across whatever he had. So Jacob remained all by himself. Then a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. Now, I want to talk about this word "man," because this is something that I found this week, and I was like, this is interesting. So most translations say that then a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. So the word man in Hebrew is ish. And it is Aleph, Yod, Shin is the letters. So I looked back and I found this in the Aleppo Codex. The Aleppo Codex is the earliest known Hebrew manuscript of the Bible. And it actually shows a different variation of the word in the original Hebrew. And this is the word that it shows. It's the same letters, but do you notice a difference? So the Nikud in Hebrew, the Nikud, and I'm actually studying Hebrew right now. It's fascinating. Yes. So these dots are the Nikud, and they give it vowel sounds. So the Aleph, typically in Hebrew, is a very silent letter. It usually doesn't have much of a sound. This Nikud underneath it, I haven't memorized all the names of these yet, gives this the E sound. And then the Shin with it above it gives it the Sh sound. Without the dot, it has a S sound. So here you have an Aleph, which it's not E because it doesn't have the dot, and the S, which instead of the Sh because it doesn't have the dot. So this is what's written in the Hebrew, not this. The original and the Aleppo Codex does not have the Nikud symbols. So this word is actually generally used to mean another. So when we read this, so Jacob remained on himself, then another wrestled with him. Because there's some interesting, studying this out, there's some interesting variations of who or what people believe he wrestled with. And when you take out this factor, it kind of starts clearing it up. That it was just not another person. In Orthodox Judaism, they actually teach that this was Esau. And I was like, that makes sense. And so when I found this, I was like, okay, well that kind of takes that out because it's actually not just a man. It's not just an ish, it's another. So he wrestled with another, yes?
Like, is it spiritual wrestling?
We're going to talk about it. That is actually one of the trains of thought that some people think for this. We're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Thank you for asking the question.
I had it the whole time. Just waiting.
When he saw that he had not overcome him, and we're going to talk about this more in a minute. Don't think we just left this alone. We're coming back to it. When he saw that he had not overcome him, he struck the socket of his hip. So he dislocated the socket of Jacob's hip when he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the dawn has broken." But he said, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." Then he said to him, "What is your name?" Then he said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but rather Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome," which is actually what Israel means. Israel means struggled with God. So names are important because they declare your authority and your character. And if we think about that, we think about, at the name of Yeshua, every knee will bow. That word name in the Greek actually refers to authority. So that authority of Yeshua. So your name has more to do with your authority and your character than we realize. So do you know what your name means? Does anybody know what their name means? I know what my name means.
I know what mine
What does your name mean?
Powerful and victorious ruler.
Whoa!
What does my name mean? Mommy, what is mine?
My name is
Tree,
never
strings.
spelled right. That's what it is.
Never spelled right.
Never spelled right.
Darren means never spelled properly.
What's
I don't know
mine?
what
My
mine is.
friend Carly, Carly Daggett?
Yes.
She said that my name meant eternal suffering,
Oh, wow.
but it doesn't.
Interesting.
Carly's Google it. Let's take
No, my name.
Does anybody else know what their name means?
No.
My name means source of joy.
Source of joy. My name means Yah is my judge.
Mine means
Oh, it
belongs
does?
to God.
That's good.
Yeah.
Same.
Mine belongs to God.
Oh, wow, yeah, that's awesome.
Elizabeth is God is my oath, and my God is abundance.
Emma is God with us because it's short for Emmanuel.
Elijah's middle name is Rhythm.
Ethan.
We used to know all the kids' names.
Soldier. I used to know all
Wait,
my
say
names.
what?
So okay, let's we'll bring it back. We'll do a word search at the end and find out what everybody's name means.
Yeah.
So I'll put this into two. Yah changes names to shift destinies. If we look in history, we see Abram Abram going to Abraham. We see Sarai going to Sarah. And then we see Jacob just getting a totally different name. He was like, we got to get this curse off of you, that's your name. And so he goes in and names him Israel. And Israel means wrestles with Yah. We talked about it a second ago. Then Jacob asked and said, please tell me your name. But he said, what's this? You are asking my name? He's like, why do you want to know my name? Then he blessed him there. His name wasn't important in that moment. He was like, why do you need to know my name? But we're going to talk about that some more in a minute too. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for I've seen God face to face, and my life has been spared. Now the sun rose upon him as he crossed by Peniel, limping because of his hip. That is why the children of Israel do not eat the tendon of the hip socket to this very day, because he struck the socket of Jacob's thighs on the tendon of the hip. Now, just so you know, that's not Torah. That's tradition. This is not something that Yah said, hey, don't eat this hip tendon anymore. So, just so know what we don't have to start looking at our meat to make sure there's no hip tendons in our meat.
I don't think we eat any anyway, so
Yeah.
we're okay.
Something that is interesting too, and I didn't put this in my notes, but so he told the man, when he was wrestling with him, he said, bless me. Well, what's the next thing he does? He changes his name. He doesn't actually ever speak a blessing over him. He allowed the name change to be his blessing. Alright, so let's go back and look at a couple other things. We're going to backtrack just a minute because there's a lot of stuff that's in here.
Honey, I'm sorry, I need to use your
Yeah.
restroom.
Alright, so let's dive into this whole man wrestling thing and all this section of this chapter. So Jacob remained all by himself. Then a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. So who was it? Who was it? Who was it? So was it an angel? Some people say that it was an angel. Some people believe that it was an angel. So let's look into it. So one of the things we saw, and Langston, you'll like this part of it. One of the things we see is people don't typically fear for their life when an angel showed up. They always tremble. The angels normally say, fear not. But very rarely, you don't ever hear anybody say, oh, my life was spared because an angel showed up.
Right.
So Daniel chapter 10, starting verse 8. So I was left alone to see this great vision. My strength drained from me, and my vigor was destroyed. I could not summon any strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words. When I heard him speaking, I fell on my face in a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Then behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said to me, Daniel, highly valued man, carefully consider the words I am speaking to you. Stand up, for now I have been sent to you. When he spoke this word to me, I stood up trembling. Then he said to me, don't be afraid, Daniel. For from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. I have come because of your words. Now we see the same thing. An angel shows up. He says, do not fear. But we never, if you keep reading the story, you never hear him say, whew, my life was spared because I saw God. So Luke 1:11, an angel of Adonai appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. Zechariah was in turmoil when he saw the angel, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said, do not be afraid, Zechariah, because your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will give birth to your son, and you will name him John. So the same thing. Which specifically says there's an angel or a messenger of Adonai. And he says, do not fear, but it never alludes to any idea of, I'm going to die because I saw God. And speaking to him, the angel declared, I am Gabriel, the one standing in God's presence. I was commissioned to tell you and proclaim this good news. So, he isn't trying to conceal his name. He comes right out. We see in the story of Jacob, we see where he says, what is your name? He says, why do you want to know my name? Here, Gabriel's like, hey, it's Gabriel. I'm an angel. Look who I am. Alright, continuing on, like we just saw. Then Jacob asked and said, please tell me your name. But he said, what's this? You are asking my name. Then he blessed him there. Judges 13:17. Then Manoah asked the angel of Adonai, what is your name? So that when your words come to pass, we may honor you. So here, this is Manoah is the father of Samson. And the angel appears to him, and he says, what is your name, so that when words come to pass, we may honor you. This word honor means esteem. In the Hebrew, it's kabod, and it really means to make weightier. But it also, if you dig a little deeper and study out the roots of this, the root of it is to promote, to glorify. Really, it is a symbol of worship. So he's saying, what's your name, so we can worship you?
I'm sorry, I turned the light.
No, you're fine. So John 17:1, Yeshua spoke these things, then, lifting up his eyes to heaven, he said, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, so the Son may glorify you. So here we see that Yeshua always wants to point the glory back to the Father. Please tell me your name. Why do you need to know my name? I don't want you to worship me. All glory needs to go to the Father.
Is that you?
Yeah. I was tapping on TV. Philippians 2:5. Have this attitude, this mindset in yourselves, which was also in Messiah Yeshua, who, though existing in the form of God, did not consider being equal to God a thing to be grasped. But he emptied himself, taking on the form of a slave, becoming the likeness of men, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself, becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. For this reason, God highly exalted, the word exalted, the same word, honor, esteem, and gave him the name, we're talking about names, that is above every name. That at the name of Yeshua, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth. And every tongue profess that Yeshua, the Messiah, is Lord, to the glory of who?
God
the Father. So Yeshua always points glory and honor and esteem back to the Father.
I literally just did my sketch yesterday about that verse.
Now this is what's really interesting. This was crazy, and I did not even know this. Going into this, I was like, when I found this, I was like, oh, this is a cool connection. So we just read that at the name of Yeshua, every knee will bow for the glory of the Father. So Isaiah 45:21, declare and present your case. Indeed, let them consult together who foretold this from ancient time. Who has declared it of old? Is it not I, Adonai? So this is Yah speaking. There is no God beside me. A righteous God and a Savior, there is none beside me. Turn to me and be saved, all the ends of the earth, for I am God, there is no other. By myself I have sworn, the word has gone forth from my mouth in righteousness and is irrevocable, that to me every knee will bow and every tongue will swear.
That's cool.
So we just have Yeshua saying, or we have the scripture says that at Yeshua's name every knee will bow. And then here we have Isaiah prophesying that Adonai is saying that at my name every knee will bow. Just saying. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for I've seen God face to face, and my life has been spared. I hope so far we're already starting to see the connections of who this is.
How do you spell that?
Which one?
What?
Piniel. It is on the screen too. P-E-N, sorry. I apologize. I told you wrong, and then I'm telling you it's on the screen. It's on the screen.
N and then I-E-L.
So he said, I've seen God face to face and my life has been spared. But Exodus 33:20 says, but he also said, you cannot see my face. This is the story of Moses being hid in the cleft of the rock so Yah can pass by him. He said, he actually says, let me see your glory, the fullness of your glory, which is your countenance, the same thing as your face. It's what's in front of you. But he also said, you cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live. John 14:6, Yeshua said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you have come to know me, you will know my Father. From now on, you do know him and have seen him. Wait, he says we can't see him. Philip said to him, Master, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. So Yeshua said to him, I have been with you for a long time, and you have not come to know me, Philip? That's terrible. He who has seen me has seen the Father.
So is Jesus God?
How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words I say to you I do not speak on my own, but the Father dwelling in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is in me, or at least believe because of the works themselves. So here he also says, the words that I say to you, I don't speak on my own, but they're the Father's. Remember that. Because right here, John 1:8 says, no one has ever seen God, but the one and only God in the Father's embrace has made him known. So this right here, but the one and only God in the Father's embrace, some translations translate that as, but the one and only begotten Son. So if you see the one and only God in the Father's embrace. So we've seen God, but God in the Father's embrace. It's the picture of a son getting embraced by his Father. So we see here, no one has ever seen God, but Yeshua has made him known. So the only way we see Yah is through Yeshua. John 5:37 goes on. Remember we talked about Jesus said that my words that I speak are not my own. John 5:37 goes on to tell us that we've never even heard his voice nor seen his form. And in Numbers 12 is when it talks about that Yah came down and stood at the tent with Moses, and Moses beheld his form. So we've never seen him, we've never heard him, we've never seen his form, but Moses saw a form. And just some other references. I didn't want to beat a dead horse into the ground. So
Pulling a 119.
yeah, John 6:46 and 1 John 4:12 all allude to the same thing, that we cannot see God. So who is it? So who is it? Acts 7:37. This is the Moshe who said to the children of Israel, Yah your Elohim shall raise up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. Him you shall hear. This is he who was in the assembly in the wilderness with the messenger who spoke to him on Mount Sinai and with our fathers, who received the living words to give to us. So right there, they're telling us, Yeshua is he who was in the wilderness being the voice of Yah.
That's because they're the same.
Yeah.
Let's say 37.
Acts, yeah.
Yeah, so good.
Acts 7:37.
Langston.
And then if you look at Genesis 48, Genesis 48 calls the messenger the Redeemer.
He's still here.
So we read Genesis 48.
So. It's my turn first.
You're done.
Oh, sorry.
Go back.
I can bring it back. I got you.
You're going to need to make your font bigger next week.
It's fine. If I wore my glasses, it would be fine.
I did wear my glasses.
So, they're not just talking about Moses,
Correct.
like in the context.
So this is Moshe who said to the children of Israel. So this is Moses speaking. Yah, your Elohim, will arise up for you a prophet, speaking of Yeshua. Because we know Yeshua came in the likeness of Moses.
Yep.
From your brothers. Him, Yeshua, you shall hear. Right? So Yeshua,
So him is you.
him, yep, we're talking, him you shall hear, the prophet. Him is the prophet.
Okay.
Him you shall hear. Right? This is he who was in the assembly in the wilderness. So the same person, him and the prophet, were also in the wilderness.
Okay.
I just have such a different version that I'm like,
Yes, so that's the whole reason I pulled this version up. This is the Scriptures translation. I typically read out of the Tree of Life, but for this scripture I specifically pulled up the Scriptures because it does such a better job of translating this out.
okay, so, yeah.
So who spoke with him on
being
him,
Moses.
lowercase him, this is Moses, who spoke with him on Mount Sinai and with our fathers.
Was
So
he
this is
referring to
also,
himself in the third person?
yes.
Okay.
So he's talking about Moses, and then he says, and our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Those are the fathers.
Right.
So the same people that talked to him, talked to the fathers, was the same people that was the same person who was in the wilderness, who was the same prophet that's going to come later, and we'll hear him. So it all alludes back to the only way that we've seen, heard anything of Yah is through Yeshua.
That's crazy. It says this is the one who was in the congregation in the wilderness.
Yes.
This is the one.
This is the one. I've never read this before. I mean, I probably have, but I've never
Well, yeah,
noticed
we've all
it.
read it and not known what the heck we're reading.
Right. So just got skimmed over it.
Yeah.
You don't even know what we're reading anymore.
So,
We do now.
What we've read, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I messed up. Hold on. So that is, we know that it's Yeshua, and we talked about this, and I'll write it on the board. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when Mark and Christiani were here. We talked about this. So we have all of time. I'll draw this out for Kiri too, because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We have all of time. This is time. This is from the beginning of time to the end of time. Right?
My brain hurt.
God, Yah, exists outside of time.
Right.
According
He is-
to Richard, you need to make it the whole screen, the whole board.
I know. He exists outside of time. Right?
Yeah.
So it is impossible for him to fit his entirety into time.
So will we ever see the fullness?
Yes, once we're outside of
To
time.
make that
Yeah.
the whole,
Okay.
So how then does it say that Yah walked with Adam in the garden? That Yah talked to Abraham, talked to Moses. He was there with Jacob. He was there.
Did they have to go outside of time?
No. So Yah took every bit of himself that he could and fit it into this little box that he could put into time.
What is that box?
This box is the Word made flesh.
Who's that?
This box is Yeshua. So every time we see Scripture talk about Yah talk to somebody, a messenger of Yah said somebody, and they felt like they were going to die because they saw Yah, it's because they did. They saw as much of him as he could fit into time.
But they didn't see the whole thing, so they
Correct.
didn't die.
Right.
Correct.
And that's, so you were
They see
asking
the
the
whole
other
thing.
week about, there's limits, right? Remember you said, Richard said so God has limits? He doesn't have limits, he has mercy, because if he knew if he put the entirety of himself into time, he would kill us all.
If you take 5 gallons of water and try to put it in a 1 gallon bucket, you'll break the bucket.
Right.
If you try to force it into it. So he can't. He would break time to try to fit himself into it, because he can't.
What?
He is eternity. He is from everlasting to everlasting.
Right.
How come the people when Jesus was walking the earth, like, why didn't they all feel afraid, like they saw death?
So I believe that's because in this instance, so up until Yeshua became the Word made flesh, that what he sent down into time was more of a spiritual aspect, because it didn't come into a body like it did when Mary conceived,
Right.
and he actually put on flesh.
But Abraham fed him, so, and he wasn't afraid of him, so I
Yeah.
think it depends on how much of his glory he decides to reveal.
Yeah. Well, and I think it depends on their perspective too. If you think about the ones like Jacob said, I've seen the face of Yah, and he has spared me. I think it's because of the state he was in, too. He was in Abraham at the time that he saw the three messengers, and they came and he fed them and had that. He was in a state of righteousness, if you would. Jacob is in a state right now where he's like, I'm going to die. I need help. He's in a lowly state, so it probably affected his perception, and he was like, oh man.
I'm just thinking back to
Yeah,
whether how much he turns a light bulb on.
correct.
He has a dimmer switch.
Well, and we also talk about not limiting Yah. Like, for instance, the idea of the Trinity, it limits him to 3 persons. Like, let's not limit him. Why is he limited to 3 persons? So the same thing with that is like we limit him to what we can see, what we think about. So the way he showed up to Jacob, it may have been different, but it was still just as much of him as he could put into the earth. which is exactly what Yeshua was. Just as much of God that could fit. Alright, any questions on 32?
We're only on 32.
Yeah, that's just the first chapter.
Okay.
So you think that the people who think they saw the face of God, which was Yeshua, that they were filled more with spirit than other people because they were more in tune to who it was than other people might be?
Maybe, but we also see that there was like evil rulers and evil kings that Yah showed up to and gave dreams and stuff like that. So I mean, it could be. I almost want to say that it's more of just it's his sovereignty. He's doing what he wants to when he wants to.
In all those paintings, the halo was just brighter, maybe.
yeah. Any questions on 32? I know that's probably the longest, deepest chapter of this Torah portion that we're going to get into. Any questions?
Nope.
Comments, concerns?
Nope.
Okay. Let's move on to 33. Then Jacob glanced up and saw, behold, there was Esau coming and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children first, then Leah and her children behind them, then Rachel and Joseph behind them. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. Oh, whoops. I got this twice. There was something I missed. There was a note that I missed. Oh, there it is. So here, I'll pull this back up. This is where we're at. So I put this in an order of importance. This shows his order of importance, right? He took the female servants and their kids and said, here, you go first. And then he said, okay, the wife that I don't really love, we'll put you next. And then Rachel, the one I really like, and Joseph, my favorite, we're going to keep them back closer to me. So that's how he starts. But he does redeem himself. Because then he says he himself passed on before all of them. So he took up his duty. His duty as the man, as the leader of the home, it was his duty, and he did it. So we see a little bit of redemption taking place there. Yeah. Well, he started on the naughty list. Like, I mean, can you imagine being his kids and being like, "Great, I'm at the front line. Yeah, we're gonna get killed first, guys." Guess Dad doesn't care as much about us. Then you're gonna need some therapy.
Yep.
His eyes glanced up and he saw the woman and the children, or the women and the children, and he said, "Who are these with you?" "The children whom God has graciously given your servant," he said. Then the female servants approached, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah also approached, along with her children, and they bowed down. And finally Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed down. "What do you mean by this whole caravan that I've met?" So he said, "To find favor in your eyes, my lord." But Esau said, "I have plenty, O brother. Do keep all that belongs to you." Yet Jacob said, "No, please, if I have found favor in your eyes, then you will take my offering from my hand. For this is the reason I've seen your face. It's like seeing the face of God, and you've accepted me." So some translations here say, "as one sees the face of God." So if I found favor in your eyes, and you take from your offering, for this reason I've seen your face as one sees the face of God, and you've accepted me. So this word face means presence, or the person of. And the fear of Yah is the beginning of wisdom. Remember that. So kings were approached with fear in hopes that he would grant favor on them. So this is the same mentality. He's approaching Esau with favor, or in hope or in fear, hoping that he would get favor from him. It's the whole. We think back to the story of Esther, when Esther was getting ready, and she was one of the king's wives, and she still was like, "I'm approaching him in fear because if I don't do this right, he could kill me." So it's kind of the same idea that Jacob is approaching Esau. So really, this because of the translation of what these words really mean, I just put this as kind of like my version of this. For this reason, I have approached your presence as I would approach the presence of God, or as I would approach the presence of a king. Please take my blessing that was brought to you, because God has been gracious to me, and because I have everything. So he kept urging him until he accepted. I didn't put this in the notes, but one thing that I was heard taught about this is that this was Jacob's way of trying to return the blessing that he stole from Esau.
Right. Yeah.
So there's three different blessings that Jacob had. He got the birthright, he got the blessing, and then he got the Abrahamic blessing. One of those things he stole. So it was his attempt to return that. And this idea of continuing to urge, this is extremely common practice in the Eastern cultures. Like, you never accept the first time they offer. So it's always, it's like if somebody buys you lunch, you're like, here, let me pay. No, let me pay. No. Okay, finally they let you pay.
Okay.
It's kind of that same thing. It's like you never accept it the first time. You always make sure they really want to do that. This idea of making sure there's still honor between the two of you. Like, I'll pay this. No, seriously. No.
Is it
Okay,
like
fine.
a humility thing or just like a culture thing?
I think it's more of a culture thing. It's very much, and because it's a way of maintaining honor. Yes.
Ethan, baby. Come sit around
Then he
the
said,
chair, baby.
let's journey and be on our way, and I'll go ahead of you. He continued, my Lord knows that the children are tender, and that the flocks and the cattle in my care are nursing. So if they were pushed hard just one day, all the flocks would die. Please let my Lord pass on ahead of your servant, and I'll move on further gradually. Set a pace suited to the livestock that are before me, and at a pace suited to the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir. Then Esau said, please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, what's this? Let me find favor in my Lord's eyes. So on that day Esau returned on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Sukkot and built a house for him. For his livestock he made booths. This is the reason the place is called Sukkot. I thought it was interesting. There's
It says.
And that the livestock were in the booths. Let's chat
Yes.
about that.
And then the other one's the coat.
Yep.
Both.
the animals were in the booths.
Spelled the same.
I'm just saying the animals were in the booths. Mary and Joseph couldn't find a place, so they went out where the animals were. Just throwing that out there.
Tabernacled amongst.
We talked about one of the places that it went last week. We talked about one of the places that they wound up was eventually the place that would be known as Bethlehem. So, just saying. So Jacob arrived in Shalom in peace to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram and camped right in front of the city. He purchased a portion of land of the field where he pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. There he set up an altar, and he called it El Elohei Yisrael, the mighty God of Israel. What's interesting, I think, is that we see this pattern of him purchasing the field. We talked about before when Sarah died, Abraham made sure that he purchased the land that he buried her for the fair price. That he did not they tried to give it to him. He said, nope, I'm going to pay for it. Because I want to make sure that I'm honoring you and that nothing ever happens down the road.
Eleanor, hush.
Same thing. He purchased this land. So that's chapter 33. I told you that.
Oh, okay.
32 is
Went
it.
much faster.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, the first one's the longest one. Any questions on 33? It's pretty
Listen, I
straightforward.
think it's nice that they made up, honestly. Gives me hope.
Yes.
Here I am.
Come here, Zoe.
Eleanor,
You calling me?
you need to sit still. Be quiet.
That's what she said.
Okay.
She comes in the door. Here I am.
All right, chapter 34. If there's no more questions on 33, we're going to jump to 34. All right, 34. This is an interesting chapter.
Ooh, this chapter.
Oh,
Is
one.
this your chapter?
What?
No, the next chapter is your chapter, I think it is. Your chapter's coming up.
Of what?
A whole Obama's in this one.
Yeah.
Now Dinah, Leah's daughter, whom she bore for Jacob, went out to look at the daughters of the land. Now let's look at this. Leah's daughter went out to look at the daughters of the land. We're going to talk about where this is going to be a pattern. We saw, what do we see about Lot? Lot, when they were together, he had to figure out where to go. It says he lifted his eyes and saw the land of Sodom. Well, this idea of lifting the eyes, looking out beyond what you're supposed to. So she looked out and saw the daughters of the land.
Why wouldn't she do that?
What?
Why would she do that?
Because she's hanging out. Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Because yeah, we'll talk about that.
It's us.
No, it's not sus.
Okay. Sure.
When Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her and raped her. But his soul clung to Dinah, Jacob's daughter. That word soul there is nephesh in Hebrew. It's a good word to know in Hebrew. It pops up all the time. Jacob's daughter, and he loved the young woman and spoke reassuringly to the young woman. So I thought about this, and I was like, that just sounds like something off of Law and Order SVU right there.
Right.
Special Victims Unit. He destroys her. And then he's like, he tried to speak nice to her. And I'm thinking, goodness great, that sounds like something off of some Special Victims Unit where the attacker then like tries to love and bring the person back. I'm like, this is sus right here.
Creepy.
So Shechem said to his father Hamor, get me this girl for a wife. Now Jacob had heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah while his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept quiet until they came in. I'm sorry, but Darren, as a father, how you going to keep quiet?
Maybe he
You about to run out into the field, bring them boys back.
I'm gonna whoop some tail.
Meanwhile, Shechem's father Hamor went out to Jacob in order to speak with him. Jacob's sons had already come in from the field when they had heard, and the men were deeply grieved and furious because he had committed a vile deed in Israel by laying with Jacob's daughter, which ought never to be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, my son Shechem, he's very attached to your daughter. Well, yeah. Please give her to him for a wife. Intermarry with us. You can give your daughters to us, and you can take our daughters for yourself. Deuteronomy 7, 1-4. When Adonai God, your God, brings you into the land you are entering into possess and drives out many nations before you, the Hittite, the Girgashite, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Perizzite, the Hivite. Wait, Hivite. We just talked about the Hivites. 7 nations more numerous and mightier than you. And Adonai your God gives them over to you, and you strike them down. Then you are to utterly destroy them. You are to make no covenant with them and show them no mercy. You are not to intermarry with them. There's a reason he said that. You can live with us, and the land will be open to you. Live in it, move about freely in it, and settle down in it. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, would that I find favor in your eyes? Whatever you say to me, I'll give you. Set the dowry and presents as high as you would like, and I'll give whatever you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife. But Jacob's son answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, as they spoke, because they had defiled their sister Dinah. So now his boys are about to be like, okay, if you want to play some games, we'll play games. Let's have some fun. Eleanor. So they have a plan. They said to him, we can't do this thing. Give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised, for this is a disgrace to us. Only by this will we consent to you, if you will become like us. So right there, I underlined this, because they're already putting this idea of being like them as a physical thing. Not understanding that there's a spiritual aspect that I'm pretty sure they know. They're probably like, you can get circumcised if you want to. That's not going to make you just like us. There's a lot more that goes into being like us than just the circumcision thing. So he says, by circumcising every male, then we'll give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves and live with you and become one people. They knew that to become like them would mean more than circumcision. They couldn't just check a box. But, I did this. I'm an Israelite now. But if you don't listen to us and be circumcised, we'll take our daughters and leave. Now their words seemed good to Hamor as well as Hamor's son, Shechem. So the young man did not hesitate to do it, since he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was honored above everyone else in his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came into the gate of the city and spoke to the men of the city, saying, so this term, the gate of the city is where all legal matters took place. So he's basically saying, I've got power, I've got pull in this city, so I'm making this a law that everybody's going to have to do this. All the men are going to have to do this. These men are enjoying a peaceful relationship with us, and they are living in the land and moving about freely in it. As for the land, look, it's spread out on both sides before us. We can take their daughters to be our wives, and we can give our daughters to them. But by this did these men consent to us, to live with us and become one people, when all our males are circumcised, as they are circumcised. Their livestock and their possessions, won't they be ours? Only let us consent to them, so that they'll live with us. So here we're seeing, not only do they want their women, they want to become part of them, so now they can take their stuff.
Okay, so not quite so noble.
Mm-hmm. Now everyone who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised. Everyone who went out the gate of the city. Then on the third day, while they were in pain, good plan by the boys,
Excuse me.
two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came against the city undisturbed and killed every male. 2 men. How did 2 men kill every male?
They were in pain?
Them jokers they're in pain, infection could be taking place. Them jokers are laid up.
I love it.
Yes, it's awesome. I do too. And it's interesting too that it was Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers.
Right.
Dinah's brothers. Those were the sons of Leah.
Yeah.
Those were Leah's kids. Leah was scorned. Jacob didn't care about Leah like he cared about Rachel. So these were not the favorites. So they were like, if Dad's not going to take care of this, we got to watch out for our own.
That's right. Love it.
Now, if we have time at the end, I'm going to go into Josephus' writings on this because he has some cool insight on this. And I'll talk about who Josephus is and all that in a little bit. But we're going to talk about that. I just put that in as let me not forget. So 26, Hamor and his son Shechem, they killed with the sword, then took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. Jacob's sons came upon the slain. Can you imagine that? 2 of them killed everybody. Then the rest of the sons come in and take everything. They took their flocks, their cattle, and their donkeys, those that were in the city as well as those that were in the field. All their wealth, their little children and their wives they captured and plundered, as well as everything that was in the houses. But Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You've brought trouble on me, making me a stench among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. I am but a few men. They'll gather against me and strike me. Then I'll be destroyed, my household and I." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" So Jacob was more worried about the inhabitants of the land than he wanted his own daughter, his own honor. He was more worried about that. And we'll see later that this action of Simeon and Levi doing this is actually going to cost them the right to the firstborn blessing.
I feel like
Now,
they shouldn't have been deceitful. Was that why? Because they were deceitful?
no, because they bloodshed. Because of the way that the bloodshed was taken. That's why he says.
Okay.
But
revenge.
yeah, they took revenge. He talks about revenge, the bloodshed. But
Get your feet up.
we also see though that this is they lost the right to the firstborn blessing. This is not necessarily the blessing of promise, because that comes through Judah anyways. So, but Judah winds up getting both anyways, because of what Reuben does later. That's going to come up in a minute. So this wound up eventually costing them the firstborn blessing. So any questions on chapter 34? All right, chapter 35. Then God said to Jacob, "Get up, go to Bethel, and stay there. Make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and to everyone who was with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods that are among you. Cleanse yourselves and change your clothes. Now let's get up and go to Bethel, so I can make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me in the way that I have gone." So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods in their hand, and the rings in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak tree near Shechem. So what's interesting about that is, like, I was always like, where do these gods come from? Well, they just pillaged all this other camp. You know, they took all the women and children. And so they've now joined with them. And so there's a good chance that they would have brought all their stuff, all of their traditions. And when it talks about the rings,
Yeah.
That it's not just saying that you can't have rings, you can't have earrings. This was a thing. It was a pagan thing where they would wear rings and adorn themselves in honor of their gods.
Okay.
So he was like, "Hey,
So they were idol.
we got to cut up all
rings,
this." Yes.
Earrings.
Right.
Then they journeyed, and the terror of God was on the cities that were around them, so they did not pursue Jacob's sons. Yah supernaturally protects them. I thought that was pretty neat. Like, this terror fell on everybody around them, so they left them alone.
Reminds me of when the Israelites were going into the Promised Land, and everyone else was all scared of them.
Yeah.
They didn't know.
Yep. Then Jacob arrived at Luz in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, he and all the people who were with him. He built an altar there and called the place El Bethel, because God has revealed himself to him there when he fled from the presence of his brother.
Can you miss your Daniel?
Then Rebekah's nurse Deborah died and was buried below Bethel under the oak, so it was named the Oak of Weeping. God appeared to Jacob again after he returned from Paddan Aram, and he blessed him. God said to him, "Your name was Jacob, no longer will your name be Jacob, for your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. So I think, I always thought this was interesting because just a couple chapters earlier, he said, "You're no longer going to be called Jacob, you're going to be called Israel." But now he's saying it again. And I think it really shows us this idea of just because God says something doesn't mean there's not a period of time that has to take place before it comes into fruition. It means there's a process. Yeah, it's not like it's immediate. So we see that there was a time period that it took for him to come into this character, this identity, this authority of Israel. God also said to him, "I am El Shaddai, be fruitful and multiply." I thought it was interesting. Like, be fruitful and multiply. That's what he told Adam and Eve. So it's interesting that now he's telling this again to Jacob. "A nation and an assembly of nations will come from you. From your loins will come forth kings. The land that I gave to Abraham and to Isaac, I give it to you, and to your seed after you, I will give the land." Then God went up from him at this place where he had spoken with him. Jacob set up a memorial stone in the place where he had spoken with him, a stone pillar, and he poured a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. So this is the same thing he did before. We talked about, was it last week we talked about that where he had the dream of the Jacob's ladder dream with the angels ascending and descending. He set up a stone, poured oil on it, and declared that this place would become the house of God, and that stone was like the cornerstone. And that is actually the place where the temple would eventually be built. So here he's at the same place setting up another stone.
I just think it's interesting again that we see that these people, that Yah must have given them instructions on how to make offerings, because he made a drink offering and he had an oil offering. Like he knew what to do.
Yep.
Good
Sorry.
catch.
So he anoints another stone. I just thought it was interesting. We just saw him do this. He's doing it again.
Like, I'm sorry, Carrie, last week the picture was for the coloring sheets.
Oh.
There was this big rock, and on the rock you see Jacob pouring oil on the rock, and Ethan comes in and he was like, "Daddy, why is that man putting mustard on that rock?" So cute.
So Jacob named the place where God spoke with him Bethel. Then he traveled from Bethel, and while they were still a distance from entering Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, but her labor was difficult. While she was struggling to give birth, the midwife said to her, "Don't be afraid, for this is also a son for you." Now as her soul was departing, for she died, she named him Ben-Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. Then Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem, which is Bethlehem. So Jacob set up a memorial stone over her grave. It is a memorial stone over Rachel's grave to this day. So again, we're talking about name changes. When Rachel was in labor and she gave birth to the son that eventually killed her, she died in childbirth. She said she named him Ben-Oni. Ben-Oni means son of my sorrow.
Oh.
And then Jacob steps in and says, "Oh wait, no, we're not going to name him son of my sorrow. I'm naming him Benjamin, which is son of my Raham, and also means son of the day, son of my old age." There's a lot of things.
Yes,
that
Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Then Israel journeyed on and set up his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. While Israel was living in that land, Reuben went and slept with his father's concubine, Bilhah, and Israel heard about it. Now Jacob had 12 sons. That was kind of a random place to put this. Leah's sons were Jacob's firstborn, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Rachel's sons were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's female servant, were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's female servant, were Gad and Asher. These are Jacob's sons who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Then Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre of Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Now Isaac's days were 180 years. Then Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of days. So his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. And we're going to get into, when we talk at the end, if we have time, I'm going to pull out the book of Josephus, and we're going to read some of that too, because it has some really interesting things on that.
I'm confused.
What?
Isaac's not dead yet?
He is now.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, he was acting like he was going to die when he got blessed 25 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
A long, slow death.
Yeah. Well, it
He's
doesn't.
like blind.
He was blind. He
Yeah,
lived that
and he
long
was like, let
blind.
me bless you because I'm going to die.
Yep.
In 25 years, apparently.
God let him live to see. Well, it's
Well,
cool 'cause
minimum.
he let him live to see his return, which is kind of neat.
No, sorry, I was just like, I'm sorry, I thought he already died.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to chapter 36. And Darren, I'm not going to make you read all these names, so be happy.
Oh, man.
Now these are the genealogies of Esau, that is Edom. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan: Adah, daughter of Elon the Hittite; Aholibamah, daughter of Anna. I just thought about this. Like, I didn't think about this when we went over this last time, but Aholibamah was a girl. That's just
Oh.
You didn't
it's
know
interesting.
that.
I never noticed that before. I was like, wait a second,
That's why I always
Aholibamah.
liked it,
It's a
'cause it was
girl.
Can
Yeah.
we just talk about that they actually talk about the girls?
Yes.
Like, which
Dog-
is a big deal?
Oh, it gets even better. Aholibamah, daughter of Anna, daughter of Zivon the Hivite, and Basemath, daughter of Ishmael,
What kind of name
sister
is
of
that?
Nebaioth. Adah bore Eliphaz to Esau. Basemath bore Reuel, and Aholibamah bore Jeush, Jalem, and Korah. These were Esau's sons who were born to him in the land of Canaan. And Aholibamah bore Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These were Esau's sons who were born to him in the land of Canaan. Now Esau took his wives, his sons, his daughters, and all the people of his household, all of his livestock, all his cattle, and all his possessions that he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to the land away from his brother Jacob. For their possessions were too numerous for them to dwell together, and the land where they were residing was unable to support them because of their livestock. So Esau lived in Mount Seir. So these are the genealogies of Esau, the father of Edom, in the hill country of Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, son of Esau's wife Adah, and Reuel, son of Esau's wife Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz were Taman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Now Timnah was a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz, and she bore Amalek to Eliphaz. These are the sons of Esau's wife Adah. These are Reuel's sons, Nahath, Zerah, Shema, and Mizhah. These were the sons of Esau's wife Basemath. These were the sons of Aholibamah, daughter of Anah, daughter of Esau's wife Zibeon. She bore to Esau Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. These are the chiefs from the Esau sons, the sons of Eliphaz. Esau's firstborns were Chief Teman, Chief Omar, Chief Zepho, and Chief Kenaz. Chief Korah, Chief Gatam, Chief Amalek. These are the chiefs from Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Adah. These are the sons of Esau's sons: Reuel, Chief Nahath, Chief Zerah, Chief Shammah, Chief Mizhah. These are the chiefs from Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Esau's wife Basemath. These are the sons of Esau's wife Aholibamah: Chief Jeush, Chief Jalam, Chief Korah. These are the chiefs from Aholibamah, daughter of Esau's wife Anah. These are Esau's sons, and these are the chiefs. These are the sons of Seir, the Horite, the inhabitants of the land: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishran, Ezar, Dishan. These are the chiefs of the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Heman. Lotan's sister is Timnah. These are Shobal's sons: Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. These are Zibeon's sons: Anah, that is Anah, who found the hot springs in the desert while he was pasturing the donkeys of his father Zibeon. Interesting fact there. These are the children of Anah: Dishan, Aholibamah, Anah's daughter. These are Dishan's sons: Hemdah, Eshban, Itran, and Sharon. These are Ezra's sons: Bilhan, Zavan, and Achan. These are Dishan's sons: Uz and Aran. These are the chiefs of the Horites: Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Simeon, Chief Anah, Chief Dishon, Chief Ezer, Chief Dishon. These are the chiefs of the Horites according to their chiefly divisions in the land of Seir. Don't worry, this gets a lot more interesting. Now these are the kings who, I'm being facetious, these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the sons of Israel. Bela, son of Beor, reigned in Edom. The name of his city was Dinabah. When Bela died, Jobab, son of Zaaron, and Boraz reigned in his place.
Good.
When Jobab died, Husham from the land of the Timonites reigned in his place. When Husham died, Habdad, son of Bedad, who struck down the Midianites in the field of Moab, reigned in his place. The name of the city was Avit. When Hadad died, Shamlah, Hadad from Mesrech reigned in his place. When Shamlah died, Shaul from Rehoboth by the river reigned in his place. When Shaul died, Baal Hanan, son of Akbor, reigned in his place. Sounds like some Lord of the Rings names.
Right?
So I'm wondering right there, why is the river capitalized?
Because it's a proper name. I guess maybe the
Okay.
name of it.
It was just named River?
Maybe.
Okay.
Usually you see things capitalized in the middle of the
Yeah.
sentence. It's a proper name or something. I don't know. I want you to do some homework on that, Darren.
Ah, yeah, I'll get right on that.
Now these are the names of the chiefs. Okay, so this is where it actually does get interesting. Now these are the names of the chiefs from Esau according to their family divisions, according to their places, by their names. Chief Timnah, Chief Alva, Chief Jepheth, Chief Aholibamah, Chief Elah, and Chief Pinon.
So the girls.
Chief Kenaz and Chief Timon and Chief Mizbar, Chief Magdiel, Chief Iram. These are the chiefs of Edom according to their places of residence in the land of their possession. This is Esau, the father of Edom. Timnah and Aholibamah were chiefs, and they were girls.
Well, it's about time.
So,
No. Okay. Can we talk about how many wives or girls Esau had? Because there was like listed a bunch of kids from a bunch of different people. And I could not keep track of that.
so Esau had,
Do you have a map today?
Remember he
not for Esau.
Remember
no.
he went and got wives, and then
He had-
saw his father
Yep.
was
And then he went and got some
displeased,
more.
and then he went and got.
Yeah.
So some of
Remember,
these
so
are
he
also, that genealogy also had like his sons and their sons. So this was like 3 or 4 generations.
Why would a man want that many? Who handles disputes with that many wives? I'm just.
Y'all work it out amongst yourselves.
So any questions on 36? I know that was a lot of information, a
Do
lot of names.
we have to read the genealogies every time?
Yes, it's part of the Torah. We're going into applications. So let's look at the application of this. How we talked about this last week. How do we apply what we just read? That's one thing I really want to start doing on a weekly basis. Is how do we do it? So the first thing is take time to wrestle with Yah. In our modern American church culture, we don't think of this as a good thing. But this is a good thing. Like, take time to wrestle with God. And what does that mean? Wrestle with Scripture. When you come across a Scripture that you don't understand or messes with your paradigm, don't just shove it away.
Yes.
Right.
Don't just push it to the side. Take time and dig into it and wrestle with that thing. Let it begin to shift. And at the end of the day, if you come up with the same conclusion, then fine. But if not, let that thing wrestle. Let it stir. Let figure out what's going on. And remind Yah of His promises in order to strengthen your faith. So when you get into situations, take time to say, Yah, your word says. Your word says. Not because He's forgotten. Not because He doesn't know. Because it will stir your faith. And this made me think of this. We talked about the scripture before. But Matthew 24:13 says, He who endures to the end will be saved. So go through that wrestling. Endure that wrestling. Then you get a new name. Once you get through the wrestling, your authority changes. Your character changes. Who you are changes. and allow these things, these wrestling, these struggles, to quote unquote crush your olives so you can produce oil for your lamp. We talked about this before, Carrie, is the parable of the 10 virgins. All 10 of them had lamps. And the scripture tells us that the word is a lamp. Doesn't say that it's our oil. Our lamp has to have oil. How do we get oil? The oil comes through the crushing. We're called to bear fruit. Psalms 1 says that he who's planted by the river bears fruit in every season. Everything he does prosper. That fruit then has to go through a crushing to produce the oil.
That's good.
To fuel the lamp. I think that's it. That's all I have. So that's what we got. That is Vayishlach. So there's your assignment for the week, your application, your life application for this Torah portion. Any questions on this Torah portion?
Did you go back to the